But hello, welcome to Soil Health Week. We are super excited to be together with you today on day one of this virtual week-long celebration of soil health. My name is Liz Rupel. I'm a lead organizer over at the Illinois Stewardship Alliance. If you haven't heard of us before, we are a statewide nonprofit organization, and we bring farmers and eaters together to solve problems in the food system. And a lot of times solving problems looks like working on policy solutions that promote a just and regenerative food system for all. So why are we here and what are we celebrating? Not only are we honoring soil health, but we are celebrating the Illinois Soil Health Week resolution, which creates an educational opportunity, this moment that we are in together, this week-long opportunity to raise awareness of the importance of soils by dedicating a celebration to occur on the second week of March and on that Wednesday of the week as Soil Health Day. So we're in the middle of a crazy legislative season here in Illinois, and the resolution has not been adopted just yet, but it's on its way to be adopted soon. We're really excited. And at the end of this meeting, I will make sure to share an action alert if you do want to take some action to help push your Illinois legislators to nudge them a little bit. I'll share that in the chat now. To nudge them a little bit to pass that resolution so we can make this official this week. So why are we celebrating soil? Well, as many of you know, Illinois has some of the best soil in the world, and everyone in Illinois is impacted by the health of our soils, from the food we eat to the water that we drink. The health of our food system, economy, and environment are all rooted in the health of our soils. So we wanted to find a way to celebrate, honor, and protect one of our most valuable natural resources to help ensure that agriculture can continue to be an economic driver for generations to come. So before I hand it over to Rick, I did want to share that this resolution is special because it is a farmer-drafted and farmer-led effort. The idea actually stemmed from the Alliance's Soil Health Caucus. For a little bit of background, our organization, we have two caucuses, a local food farmer caucus and a soil health farmer caucus, and everyone comes together, spanning from farmers to advocates to decide on our policy agenda, bring issues to our attention, and advocate for those issues throughout the legislative session. So our caucus felt as though this is needed because despite soil's importance to human health, climate mitigation, the environment, our economy, nutrition, food, all of the things, there's little public awareness of the importance of soil protection. So I just wanted to take a moment to express our gratitude to these caucus members who attended weekly meetings to draft this legislation and plan this event. So we wouldn't be here without you all. Tom Abbott, Katie Adams, Alan Bailey, Warren Bacher, Ariel Beauchamp, Becky Doyle, Derek Irvin, Andy Hazard, Richard Lyons, Christine Johnson, Ted Kroshkoff, Aaron Meyer, Cliff Schutte, Tim Sonder. Thank you all so much. These farmers and advocates are all across Illinois and join virtually every week in our caucus meetings. And yeah, we would not be here without them. And we really appreciate you all. So now on to the main event. Rick Clark, he is a fifth generation farmer from Williamsport, Indiana. The main goal of his farm is to build soil health and achieve balance with Mother Nature. He's developed and is constantly improving a systemic approach to regenerative farming and is most proud of incorporating regenerative farming practices with all his acres being certified organic. He calls this regenerative organic stewardship with no tillage. And I look forward to being here with you all to listen to how he is building a system that will be viable and profitable for generations to come. All right.
Thank
Rick,
you.
I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to hand it over to you.
Very good. Liz, thank you so much. It is an absolute honor to be presenting today with the Illinois Stewardship Alliance and this whole week of soil health. Liz, I can't quite get it to share yet. Let's see. Here we go.
Oh, there we go.
I don't think this is what. I'm sorry, I apologize. Let me do this again. Here we go. This is the one that we need right here. Okay, very good. Well, thank you. I'm sorry for that.
It's okay, looks
Again, it's
great.
an honor to be here today. I like to start with this slide now because, folks, this is so important um, that you have the team. I call anyone who's not a family member a team member. You have team members and you have family members
Not
that are all
anybody like say other.
that are all on board with what we're doing. And this is the immediate family here, and it's so important that you have yourself surrounded with positive people because um, you are going to be making so many decisions in this system, and you need to have all the positive feedback you can around you. So that's why I start with this slide now. I'm a Purdue graduate in the School of Ag Econ. I'm a fifth generation farmer. I've been practicing now for about 38 years. Beautiful wife Carol for 33 years, daughters Jessica and Rachel. And on the farm, my father Richard. Now, Dad's been very important for me and the success of where I am today. Um, Dad has taught me how to think, not so much taught me how to farm. And there's a big difference because it's very important that we understand how to think and how to be quick and how to be nimble and be quick on your feet so that you can make change and change. You may have a plan X today, but this afternoon Mother Nature is going to change something and you got to roll into the next letter in the alphabet. So it's very important that we remain nimble and quick. Nephew Aaron is on the farm. He loves to crunch numbers and he runs the financial side of the farm. We've been no-tilling soybeans for 18 years, no-tilling corn for 13, cover crops for 13, and farming green for 11. I'm going to define farming green in a couple more slides, but that kind of gives the background and some of the history of what we've been doing here. We have a 7-crop system plus one. Most of our neighbors are farming 2 crops, corn and soybeans. We're up to 7 now, not in any particular order. Corn, beans, wheat, alfalfa, peas, cattle, and milo and livestock. So I mentioned cattle twice, but cattle, sheep, goats, whatever the case may be. And the plus one is a regen. Regen is when you take an acre out of production and you give it the full package that you possibly can of a cool season cocktail, then a warm season cocktail, then you get it prepared for the cash crop for next year. Now, I'm presenting today to the Illinois Stewardship Alliance team and anyone joining, but I never know where the audience is from. So let's think about regen, or let's think about being in a northern state for just a moment. Northern states have a much shorter growing season than we have in central Illinois and central Indiana, which is where I'm located. And oftentimes the complaint is we don't have enough time, it gets too cold. I understand that. But by giving yourself more cash crops in your rotation, bringing livestock in and adding the regen, I've now given you 3 opportunities to maximize this cover crop potential. The cereal grain, raise a wheat, a barley, maybe even cereal rye, and do not double crop soybeans behind this crop. And then that gives you the time that you need to put these massive cocktails out. There's not very many times that when you farm in Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, and North, that we get opportunities to put out warm season cocktails. So we have to take advantage of this. So please consider how to now incorporate these systems so that you have that ability to get these cover crops planted, because I'm telling you folks, it is massively critical that we get these cover crops planted as early as we can in the fall so that we can have a better chance of success next spring. 5,100 acres certified organic, and the remainder of the farm is in transition right now. Now, this is not going to be an organic presentation, but what you're going to see is there's plenty of room on this curve of doing nothing to doing what I'm doing. There's plenty of room to land on this curve, and let's start doing some of these practices to promote good stewardship, conservation, and starting to reduce the dependency on synthetic inputs. We've used no starter fertilizer for 8 years, no fungicide in 8 years, no seed treatment 8 years, no insecticide in 8 years, no P or K, and no ag lime. Now you're going to see why we're able to do these things, because we've let these systems go far into maturity, and I'm going to explain all that in just a little bit. We've not applied any synthetic nitrogen in 3 years as well. This is all organic, and like I said, you know, we are organic. This is not going to be an organic presentation, but I think this is very important. This is an organic system with no tillage. This is unheard of. This is very hard. It's very frustrating at times. It takes many hours of thinking, and again, back to what I mentioned earlier, you have to be able to flex and bend and react and constantly be on the change, because Mother Nature is going to do something to make this a humbling experience, believe me. Okay, my definition of farming green is planting the cash crop of corn and soybeans into a living, growing green cover crop. Termination may not occur for up to 30 days after planting. Now, what you're seeing in that video is what we used to do a long time ago. We're planting corn in that video. That's cereal rye at 4.5 feet tall. You can't even see the plant or row units. It's so tall. Most people say, or books that you read, you can't plant corn into cereal rye. I think that's a bunch of baloney. I do not buy into the fact that there is an allelopathic effect. I buy into the fact that cereal rye is a tremendous sequester of nutrients. And if you're going to plant corn into this type of an environment, you need to bring your nitrogen forward into the system. We used to spread ammonium sulfate, AMS, whatever you want to call it. We would do that back in the days when we were no longer using, or when we were still using inputs. We're no longer using them now. But when we were, we would spread ammonium sulfate for 2 reasons. I thought the ammonium was more stable than urea, and almost all fields need sulfur now. So you were knocking 2 things out at once with that one product. Now, we no longer do it to this degree anymore because I cannot bring that nitrogen forward like we used to. But if you are still using chemistry and still using synthetic fertilizers, by all means, plant corn into cereal rye, bring your nitrogen forward, put it on with your planter, maybe spin some on with a spinner after you've planted, something to get over that hump of that sequestration of nutrients. And also, we are probably at this point at least a carbon to nitrogen ratio of at least 50-1. So we have to overcome all of the microbial activity that's taking place that has all of this nitrogen tied up. But once we understand that, we can do these things. Here, now that picture, that's the same field with the roller crimper terminated that cereal rye and rolled that down when that corn was about V1 or V2 growth stage. So you can see there's that, and there's not a weed to be found right now. So this can work, folks. We just have to get the right kind of mindset and be willing to change. Maximize what the cover crop was intended to do. We are sometimes spending $40, $45, $50 an acre on these cocktail packages. And the last thing I want to do is go out and burn it all to the ground on the first warm next spring with chemistry. Has it done you some good? Yes. But there is so much more potential there to be had if we just let them grow a little longer. Sequestration of nutrients. I've already talked about this. I've got some slides coming. I'll spend more time on this power on those slides. nitrogen fixing. It's free, folks. 78.1% of the atmosphere consists of nitrogen. Let's take advantage of it. Growing carbon. That's the whole buzzword right now. We've got to, excuse me, we've got to grow carbon. We got to get in these carbon markets. We just got to go, go, go. I disagree. I say we've got to slow down, let more of the rules come into play. I mean, folks, here's the biggest problem I see with this. There is no metric out there available to measure carbon within the soil profile accurately, repeatably, and cheaply. That does not exist. So why would we be basing a market on an element that we cannot measure? So yes, there are ways to measure that element, but I said easily, cheaply, and repeatably. So let's let things shake out and let's let technology catch up, and then let's get ready to then join. Another thing to consider here is you are going to have to abide by the 5 principles of soil health if you are going to be in these markets. So you might as well start now and get prepared and start doing these practices. Erosion control. I don't care where you live, you have erosion. Now, let me hone in a little tighter on where our farm is located. Everyone knows where Champaign, Illinois is. We are straight east of Champaign, Illinois into Indiana and then go north about 15 miles. And we also farm in Illinois and Indiana. I know what flat fields look like, but believe me, folks, there is erosion on flat fields as well. Probably some of the worst erosion is wind. Excuse me. So once we have these armors in place, we are now able to help mitigate those erosion events. Increase pounds of biomass. That's what my whole world is about now. We are doing weed suppression with cocktails, forages, cover crops, whatever you want, whatever word you want to use. That's what we're using. So we need biomass. Feed the microbes. We've got to feed them as many days out of the year as possible. We have to. We've got to keep them alive and keep them moving at all times. Armor the soil. That's what I'm talking about. Look at that mat we've laid down. We are armoring the soil. We are limiting evaporation. So when we work hard to build water infiltration rates, aggregate stability, soil health, organic matter, all of these things we work hard to do. So then when we get those rain events, our profile is filled full of that moisture. We now have a lid over that profile because we've got it armored. We are limiting evaporation. So when we get to the dog days of summer, we still have some fuel left in the tank to get our cash crop to the finish line. This is all extremely critical for success. Suppress weeds. That's the world that we live in. But I'm going to show you that I think we can just about eliminate burn down chemistry and still take care of some weeds with some scouting and maybe a little bit of spot spraying, and start putting money into our pockets and start being less dependent on synthetic inputs. What drives our system? It's all about building soil health. If you do not have soil health, we don't have anything. And everything we've strived for in the last 17 years has been about building soil health. Diversification. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in detail later on, but this is extremely critical to success within these systematic approaches. Cash crop rotation. Now, I know you can only have cash crops growing where you have a market. I do understand that. But if those markets are there, please expand yourself out and get more cash crops growing. Now, another thing I want to mention is sometimes we need to stop just looking at those markets that are just out our back door. We are now driving corn one way an hour and a half to the market, to the organic market. Beans sometimes are going upwards of 7 hours away. So don't think that you can only do this stuff because that market's 10 minutes away or 15 minutes. Those days may be gone if you're going to travel down the road that we're on. So just keep that in mind. Milo, for example, has wound up in Texas before. So just keep these things in mind. Data collection. Everything you're going to see in my presentation requires not only data collection, but what are you doing with that data? Are you using it to be beneficial? So please collect data. I've always say you have to baseline where you are so that you know where you're going. You know, you've got to figure out where you've been so you know where to go. So make a baseline, write down all the history you possibly can on every single field, and then when you start to implement these conservation practices, these regenerative practices, whatever you want to call it, you can then see if what you're doing is working. Is it correct? Are we headed in the right direction? All of these things, but you have to collect data to do this. Armor the soil, I've already talked about that. It's very important. Human health. We don't think about this enough. I look at human health two ways. Nutrient density in food, which by the way is 30% less than it used to be 25 years ago. And I look at human health as simply removing the harmful synthetic inputs from your daily grind. I have been around these inputs my whole life. I think I'm the first generation to be exposed to the chemistry most of my whole life, because yes, my father had chemistry, but he didn't get chemistry until he was in his 50s. I was hanging around helping Dad when I was 14. So I have been exposed to these skull and crossbone products most of my life. I'm not going to do that to my beautiful children, and I'm not going to do that to my beautiful grandchildren. That is probably the main reason why I shifted to organic. I want to eliminate all of those harmful inputs. Being a good steward. It's just that simple. Steward is a word that means exactly what it says, to be good at something. Take care of whatever it is you're involved with. If you are a good steward to your land, you're taking care of your land. If you have a tile hole, fix it. If you have a wash or a cut in your field, build a waterway. Be a good steward to the land. And the last thing on this slide is ROI, return on investment. That's what it's all about, folks. It's not about yield. You do not see yield anywhere on this slide. Yield does not drive our system. Now, I did go to Purdue, and I know that you have to know what your yield is to calculate ROI. I do know that. But that's where it ends, right there. Yield is not driving this. Now, when you start to focus in and really hone in on your practices, create that change, make the change, get comfortable with the change, you then start to see your inputs go down and your yield will stay the same or start to climb. Now you are cranking on ROI, and that's what it's all about. You know, if General Motors sits down at a board meeting, it's not about how many cars they can build, it's about how much money can they make per car. Same thing as a farmer. It's not about bushels. How much money can we make per bushel? That's what it's all about. Balance. This is what I've been talking about. We have to be headed toward balance. Then we can start to take away those synthetic attributes like we've been doing. A symbiotic relationship with Mother Nature. Now, when we started down this journey, we were using the traditional soil testing methods, which I no longer use. We now do everything with a Haney test. It's a soil health test, a Haney soil health test. And within that health test is a plethora of information. It is almost too much, but it's not, but it's almost too much. But inside of that are several things that you need to be starting to track. And that's what we do. It's no longer a single snapshot in time. We are looking at the trend. What is the trend of organic nitrogen? What is the trend of organic carbon? What is the trend of CO2 burst? What is happening with predator to prey? All of these things, we look at the trend. Because we all know that we could go out today and pull a sample, wait 2 weeks, go out and pull another sample, and you're probably going to have different results based on certain weather events. So now there's two things I want to talk about on this Haney test. I just mentioned a couple of them. Predator to prey. I get asked often, how can you plant non-GMO corn without any insecticide? Well, it's because we are headed toward balance. We have balance within the profile, meaning the beneficial species that preys on corn rootworm is alive and thriving in our microbial biome because we are no longer using the acids and the chemistries and scorching all of the ground that then just crushes these microbes. So by eliminating that stuff, the salts and the acids, we have now, I'm not saying we're at balance, but we are much closer than we used to be. So whatever that species is that preys on that rootworm is within our system and keeps the rootworm at bay, and that's how we can raise corn, a non-GMO corn, without any insecticide. Now the other balance I want to hone in on today, and folks, there's 50 on that printout that Rick came up with, Dr. Rick Haney. It's amazing. But the second one I want to talk about today is bacterial to fungal balance. When we started doing this Haney test at the very beginning, we were 100% bacterial-based farm. That's not where anyone wants to be. Right now, after implementing these regenerative practices, these soil health building practices, whatever your word is, we have now shifted and we are now about 60-65% fungal and 35-40% bacteria. And that's right where I want to be because we have to promote the growth of the arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi. They are the communication backbone network of the whole microbial biome. There is not going to be any transaction of minerals or nutrients unless it goes through that fungal network. So this is why I am so determined to do no tillage. Because think about tillage. These fungal communities, they work hard, they build their community so that now they can do the work they were born to do. They are very efficient at what they do, and they are now going to start the transaction of these minerals and these nutrients. And Farmer Brown comes in, drops his tillage tool in, and wipes the community out. Now, the community's got to rebuild itself. So in this building process, there are no transactions taking place. The community gets built just in time for another passive tillage, and whammo, the whole community is wiped out again, and so on and so on. You get where I'm going with this. If we don't stop tillage, we're never going to have an efficient and fine-tuned arbuscular mycorrhizal network, and that's not good. So that's why I strive so hard to at least minimize tillage, if not eliminate. So that's what I'm talking about, balance. If I lose balance, we've got to start all over. And folks, I'm not going to start over with the absolute out of control price gouging that's going on right now in this synthetic input world. So I don't want to play that game anymore. Here's a picture of the row unit. People often ask how sophisticated is the row unit. It's not very sophisticated at all. There are no no-till coulters, and there's no row cleaner. We've taken all that off. We have a double disc opener from Prescription Tillage Technology. You're going to want to write that down because that is the best blade I've ever seen for a massive no-till, high residue system like we are in now. There is no more hairpinning. It does not make a V slot. It makes more of a U slot, and it actually crumbles down the sidewall as it's rolling through the field. We plant our corn 3 inches deep, and if you were to stop that planter and in the field and pick it up and move forward out of the way, and you look at that seed before the closing system gets there, it's usually 3/4 of the way already covered before the closing system even gets there. So we're planting 3 inches, it's already got 2 inches of cover. It only needs a little bit of help from that closing wheel. So the unit's not sophisticated at all, but it's taken a long time to get here. Don't think you can go out tomorrow if you've been a conventional tiller and think you're going to just go no-till and start with a planter like this. You're probably going to need a little bit of help until your ground gets more back into that tilth, aggregate stability, all of those things that you're looking for when you're building soil health. Weapon of mass destruction number 1 against weeds. I do not care what your flavor is, what your color is. I do not sell anything. I'm only trying to give you information to help you make decisions that maybe you will grab a couple of my thoughts. I mean, folks, the speakers that are lined up for the week are unreal. Take advantage of listening to all of them. Take 1 or 2 pieces from everybody and take it back home and try to incorporate something onto your farm. Now, the last thing any of us want to do is offend the way anybody farms. That's not what we're here for. We're not to say that our system's better than yours. No, that's not what we're doing here. We're trying to show you other things to add to your system to make it better. So get your weapon of mass destruction, I don't care what it is, and get cover crops planted. Weapon of mass destruction number 2 against chemistry. This is my baby. This is the 60-foot I&J roller crimper. This is the beginning of our transition to move into organic with no tillage. We are terminating 90% of our cover crops with that tool right there. So this is important to understand how to get this tool into your system. So those are my two weapons. That's where it all begins, and this is where it all ends. Livestock. I know this isn't for everybody, but if you want to build soil health efficiently and quickly, it takes livestock. We have livestock. I've been around livestock my whole life. Dad had them ever since he was in his 30s. So the difference, though, is Dad ran livestock on permanent pasture. We're running livestock across the acres that we still put cash crops on. They're grazing on forages or cereal grains or whatever the case may be. And it's something that, you know, I'm probably not doing. I'm not a grazing expert, so I'm probably not doing it to be the best, but probably the best way to graze would be small paddocks with high impact cattle, 500 head on 1 acre. I mean, stuff like that. That's when you really get the big bang for your buck. I do not have enough time in the day to move cattle 3 times a day. So we are building paddocks that are 7, 8, 10 acres in size. Those paddocks maybe will last 4 or 5 days. We still follow the same rules that the grazers follow, but we're just doing it on a little bit longer time frame. Probably not quite as good, but it's still better than nothing. Now, livestock's not for everybody. I get that. But if you have the ability, let's get some livestock going. All right, I mentioned the power of cereal rye. Now let me set this up. This was a cornfield in the fall. We came in this particular field, we used 100 pounds of Elbon rye and we no-till drilled it with our drill. The rye came up in the fall, maybe got 3-4 inches tall, went into dormancy, came out of dormancy next spring, started the tiller, and away we go. Now, the field is going to be planted to soybeans. So we've got it set up. We're corn, planted rye, excuse me, we're going to soybeans. Now you have to be able to collect data. I've talked about this already. So what you do is you go out and you measure a 2 foot by 2 foot square. And you clip everything living above ground in that 2 foot by 2 foot square, put it in a bag and send it to the lab. And the lab will send back the information that you need to build a chart like this. So on 12-inch rye, this is probably the height of rye when it's first coming out of dormancy in the spring, that it's warmed up, it's a nice 70-degree sunny day, everyone's dying to get into the field, and by golly, I planted rye, and I don't want that stuff to get out of control, so we've got to go kill it now. So you fire up the sprayer, and away we go. Did you do some good? Yes. But there's a lot more on the table. Okay, right now remember, this is the above ground only material. It's already got 82 pounds of nitrogen in it. And look at the 0060, which is potash. 133 pounds of potash in the above ground material. 4 days. If you just would have waited 4 days to go out and kill it, this is what you would have had. 120 pounds of nitrogen and 213 pounds of 0060. Now, this is what I mean by collecting data and understanding what to do with it. When you look at that nitrogen column, you start to understand what I was talking about. The rye is sequestering most of the available nutrients that that young corn plant needs to thrive and grow. And we have an extremely high carbon to nitrogen ratio. So we have to bring nitrogen forward. Now, if you believe this notion of mine, then let's go one step further and let's think about broadleaf weeds that germinate early in the spring. If you come to our farm, you will not see very many, if any, broadleaf weeds that germinate early because of this phenomenon. The rye has sequestered the nutrients that they need to grow, and it's crushed them, it's buckled them at the knees. Now the rye is going to grow, it's going to canopy the sun, and that broadleaf weed is over. So that's what's going on our farm. We don't have very many broadleaf weeds up front. Now, what we are getting are flushes of grass in the back because these nutrients are releasing later on. I'm going to show you that in just a minute. Look at 28-inch tall rye. 134 pounds of N, 281 pounds of potash. Do you understand now why we no longer apply P or K? We do not need it. There are thousands of pounds of these products below our feet. We just have to go down and get them. Look at the biomass, 6,800 pounds. And what I mean by going down and getting them is sending the living roots of these cover crops down to sequester these nutrients, bring it back to the surface into that top living plant, and then you terminate that living plant and it releases out those nutrients. Now, thank goodness when I did this, I had my brain hooked on here because this is all fine and dandy, but what's available to that soybean plant? Good question. We went back 2 months after termination and pulled another sample. Now, this rye was terminated on June the 1st or June the 2nd with a roller crimper, and then we came back on August 1st, August 2nd, and pulled this sample. You do the math. 281 minus 65 underneath the 0060 column is the amount of potash that became available for that plant. Is all of that available today? Probably not, but at least half of it is. More than enough to raise a soybean crop. excuse me. So it's very important that we let these cover crops go to maturity. The power of fixation clover. Same thing. We go out in the fall, and when we plant clovers, we've got to allow ourselves at least 45 days before the first killing frost to make sure that we can get to third trifoliate. If you can get to third trifoliate, you're just about setting yourself up for success to have that legume survive the winter and be with you next spring. So this was a cocktail we planted in the fall. It had 7 pounds of Balanza fixation clover in it, and that's the only legume I put in this cocktail because we've got a little bit of volunteer hairy vetch, and we also have volunteer cereal rye. So I did not add any cereal rye to this cocktail. But this is going to be a cornfield. But the way we farm now, and by letting these species go to maturity, there are some seeds becoming fertilized. It's going to happen. So we're going to have volunteers. So May the 20th, look at these numbers on May the 20th. June the 4th, we are up to 114 pounds of nitrogen. Now remember, same thing going on here. 2 foot by 2 foot square, clip what's above ground and send it to the lab. Folks, I haven't even taken into account any of the nitrogen that's in the nodules. So I don't know how to do that because the roots are going everywhere. So I don't know how you account for all of the roots that are attached to that one plant above ground. So this is just the above ground material. We're up to 6,800 pounds of biomass. 4 days. There's that 4 days again. If you would have waited 4 days, look at the numbers now. It's geometric. Okay, first couple things here. First of all, Rick, I don't want to plant corn on June the 8th. I get it. Believe me, I do. Now, we did in this particular instance. We did. But I understand that. You're just getting started. You want to use these legumes to your benefit. So how about we plant on May 25th? And how about we wait 5 or 6 days before you terminate? So I'm assuming that you're going to use a non-GMO seed, and we can't terminate once that plant's out of the ground because we'll kill it. So you got about 5 or 6 days. That's what we used to do. We would wait 6 days and then spray Roundup and terminate the cover crop. So let's say you planted on May 25th. It's now about June the 1st. And for just interpolation's sake, let's assume you've got 100 pounds of nitrogen that was fixed or that was above ground. I'm asking you to take credit for half of that today. Okay, the day that you're going to terminate that. That's 50 pounds. For easy math, let's assume nitrogen is $1 a pound, which it's got to be awfully close, if not over that. That's $50 an acre. Now, this cocktail that we put out was $25. So right now, you are $25 ahead of the game, plus that's only looking at it from the nitrogen standpoint. Look at all of the other benefits that came along for the ride. Look at the K2O, 444 pounds. Look at calcium, 228 pounds of calcium we sequestered from deep within the profile. So we have to look at the whole big picture here. Yes, I just showed you how to save money by looking at one element only, nitrogen, but all this other is coming along also. I've got slides coming that are going to show the power of this. Again, I had my brain hooked on, and we came back 6 weeks later and took another sample. Look at the numbers now. Look at the nitrogen. It has exhausted 210 pounds. Is all of this available now? No, but half of it is, and the other half is coming along throughout the growing season. So it's your perfect spoon feeding situation. Now look at the biomass. We dropped from 12,700 to 5,400, basically a 7,000 pound drop in 6 weeks. Well, that would be expected. The sample we took on this June the 8th, which was the day we planted, had 5,200 pounds of organic carbon and had a carbon to nitrogen ratio of 20-1. Now that, some people may say that seems a little high for a legume, but don't forget, we had those mixed in volunteer cereal rye. I'm going to guess, I don't know, 30 pounds. It looked like about what 30 pounds would look like. So with all that being said, I have a rule that I call the 70-30 rule. Since we no longer till and we no longer use chemistry, we have to have 70% of our weed suppression has to come from the cover crop. The other 30% of the suppression is coming from the cash crop canopy. We are on 20-inch corn spacing and 20-inch soybean spacing. So we need our cash crops to get to canopy in a hurry so that we can suppress weeds after the cover crops have done their job. When you look at this right here and you see that we've lost 7,000 pounds, it has now eaten it up to the point where we now have holes going through to dirt or to soil. What that means then is when sunlight comes down and you get moisture, here come the weeds. So we've got to be Johnny on the spot here, get these cash crops planted, give them the best environment we can so they can take off and go. I also call this the power of patience because it takes patience to wait until June the 8th to plant corn in West Central Indiana. As soil health goes up, so does human health. I've already touched on this briefly. 30% less nutrient density than 25 years ago, that is unacceptable. Human health thrives only when soil health thrives. You have to have soil health first, and then you will have human health. This is very, very important to understand. There are so many people around the world starving, and I wish the first thing we would do to help them is send them a more nutrient-dense food. Then that would help get them to become more healthy, and then they could fight off diseases with their own immunity. That's exactly what we're trying to do with the crops in the field. We are trying to build soil health to the point to where it becomes healthy and stable to where those situations can fend off attacks from pests. So the parallel between human health and soil health is extremely close. Please pay attention to that. Input reductions. Since 2011, I thought we would just look at what we've done with our inputs. And we have reduced diesel fuel by almost 50%. Now, there's two reasons why. Here's one of the reasons. We have reduced horsepower from 3,350 down to 1,200. So by reducing horsepower, yes, we're using less fuel, but we are doing way less passes across the field. It's a 3-pass system right now. It's a pass in the fall of a no-till drill to plant the cover crop. It's a pass in the spring of a no-till planter to plant the cash crop. And it's a pass in the spring to terminate the cover crop mechanically. That's it. Yes, there's a combine in there, but everybody has to combine. So let's talk about from beginning to getting your crop growing. That's what we're doing. We've eliminated we've eliminated MAP, potash, lime, and chemistry. Now, these are all averages. So, one year we may have had 4,000 acres of corn, and the next year we had 1,500 acres of corn just because of the rotation. But what I'm trying to show here is an average of those rotations across 10 years. So any particular year, we may have used more synthetic N than the prior year. So that's all I'm trying to say here. Now, the next slide shows what this means in today's dollars. That fuel savings is $58,000. Now, I do not have a line for machinery next because I did not put the depreciation schedule in here. That would have made this number even bigger. So I'm being very conservative here. Didn't even put that in. Synthetic N, $200 or $433,000. Now, folks, I built this slide, I don't know, maybe 6 weeks ago now. So this slide's probably out of date. But this is what it was that day. And when I say out of date, I mean these numbers are probably higher. MAP is 207,000, potash 233, lime 102, and chemistry 316,000. This is the one that I chuckle about because we were paying $316,000 for chemistry that A, wasn't doing the job, and B, creating chemically resistant weeds. Unbelievable. Unbelievable we were doing that. So if you add all this up, it's $1,349,000 we are saving on an annual basis, and that number's repeatable because we're doing this every year now. That's real money. That's serious money. So, you know, a couple ways to look at this. Rick, you are a wacko. You are doing things that I'll never dream of doing because I'm not going to do and take that much risk. I understand that. But remember what I said at the beginning. Let's find somewhere on the curve to do something. So take half of this. I'll take $650,000 of savings or whatever the math works out there. I'm kind of rounding a little bit there. I'll do that and still maintain yield because it's all about 2 or 3 things: building soil health, building human health, and increasing ROI. So we can do this, folks. We can do it. Thoughts to be aware of: cocktail packages prescribed for weed problems. I think we're already doing this. We don't realize it, but let me explain what I mean here. We're going to sit down with a soil health expert, and we're going to give them the history of say the Smith 120 or whatever it is you call your fields. We happen to call our fields the previous owners of the farms. So let's say we sit down with the Smith 120, and we are going to give as much history as we can of crops that we've grown, the rotation that we've been in, the weed problems we've had, the fertility issues, the soil sample tests that we have, any leaf tissue analysis we've done, anything that we've done to help get a handle on what the Smith 120 looks like and what's it feel like, okay? Then we're going to say, based on what we now know with the synergies between these species and those problems, this is the cocktail package you're going to plant. We're doing it now. I know we are. Because different species give off different exudates that turn on different groups of microbes. And then when you get certain groups of microbes turned on, they create an environment that is not suitable for that particular weed to grow in. It's that simple. That's coming. Nutrient density goes up as soil health goes up. I've already talked about that. There are no failures. That is too negative of a word. Outcomes we did not expect. That's what I like to say. Hey, in 2021, I went through the alphabet on plans and actually started over on capital letters. I think I got into the mid-30s before December 31st finally got here. And you reach a point where you're just walking around numb thinking, what in the world am I doing wrong here? I can't do anything right. You cannot do that. And like I said earlier, you have to have everyone on board. If you have negative people around you, get different people. You need positive people, positive thoughts to go down this road. Carbon markets will require soil health practices. I already talked about this. I'm telling you they will. There's no other way around it. Do not underestimate the power of what's going on right now with not only this presentation, but every presentation this week or any conference that you go to. Find those people that are doing these things and have been doing them for a long time and that are closer to you and your back door, and get to know them. Everywhere I go to speak in public, I ask this question at some point in the process. And if you want to raise your hand, I know nobody can see you, but you will feel good about yourself. Who has been no-tilling for at least 30 years or more? Raise your hand. And there is always somebody in this audience that raises their hand. Always. Find those people. Go talk to them. Ask them, how did you do this? What made you start? Why are you still doing it? I mean, this is great that I'm here. It's great you've got all these other speakers coming. But folks, we get in our vehicles and we go home. Yes, you can still seek us out. That's fine. But it's always better to have that local person helping. Unfortunately, a farmer's success is measured by yield. That's too bad. It's not about yield. It's about return on investment. It's about soil health. It's about building human health. It's about being socially accepted in your community. It's about being a good steward. It's about being a conservation-minded individual. All of these things are better ways to measure success. View cover crop as important as a cash crop. You're going to hear me talk about this a lot. This is very, very important. These cover crops have to be established in the fall as soon as we possibly can get them there. 3-pass system, already talked about that. Stop looking at single year ROI and take the averages. I mentioned earlier about a regen year. You take an acre out of production and you give it everything you can for as far as cocktail packages are concerned. How can you do that? Well, first of all, that regen year is not a zero. You're building organic matter. You're building aggregate stability. You're building water infiltration rates. You're building carbon. You're building the microbial community. You're building soil health. All of these things are important and they have a value. But when you take that across the 7-year average of the crops that we now have, that number is not as ugly as you might think it is. And by the way, the next cash crop following that regen year, that's a big one. So it makes up for some of that deficit. Diversity is essential. I'm going to talk about this in a little bit more in the presentation, but you have to have diversity. More biomass, the better. Continue to Haney soil health test. It's important. You've got to know if your system is doing what you want it to do, or are we crashing? Are we going backwards? What's happening? Do whatever you can to have a cover on every acre. Again, I'm going to drive this home. Establish a baseline to monitor change. There's a young man in Iowa that and again, I don't sell anything, so don't think I'm giving you this gentleman's information because I'm going to get a kickback. That's not how this works. I'm trying to pass along the information that I find that I think would be beneficial. Mitchell Hora, Continuum Ag in Washington, Iowa. He has a platform called Topsoil, and he has now given us the ability to do exactly what I'm talking about here. Baseline your farm and monitor change. Continuum Ag, Mitchell Hora. Test on your own farm to see what works. Just because I'm doing it doesn't mean it's going to work on your farm. So please try it out. Go slow, go easy, and see what you think. Mother Nature has guided me where to go every single step of the way. Pay attention to her. She will humble you every step of the way if you get a little cocky. Don't worry, she'll bring you down. And that's okay, because we have to be constantly reminded that there are other ways to do things. Just look for the signals that she's giving us. Take advantage of them. Do not jeopardize the livelihood of the farm. This is important. A lot of this stuff I talk about, it looks like it's all great, it's all good stuff. It's all candy canes and lollipops. It's not, folks. There's a lot of hardship, a lot of grief, a lot of outcomes I did not expect. So please do not get all crazy and just jump full in. You've got to start easy and do not jeopardize the livelihood of the farm. Progression is real. This is what I mean. Broadleaves come first, grasses come second, shrubs third, trees fourth. That's the exact progression we're in. Now, we're not going to get to shrubs and trees because we are still using enough cutting mechanisms on the farm that we are going to cut and slow those down. Plus, the suppression of the cover crops pretty much chokes that stuff out. But it is real. It is real. Remember, the people who are being talked about are the ones who are creating the change. Change is good. The success of next year's cash crop starts with the success of this year's cover crop. There, I said it again. But it's that important. Don't make excuses that support your agenda. We all do it every day. Stop doing that. Topsoil, just talked about it. Annuals become perennials. Basically, what I'm trying to be funny there, and I'm trying to say that as we plant these cocktails and as they grow and we let them go to maturity, they are dropping seeds. Yes, that particular parent plant dies, but the seeds are there to live and be here next year. So basically, it's my funny way of saying you're going to have volunteer. 70-30 rule, I've already talked about that. Tillage has to stop. And if nothing else, please stop deep tillage and let that microbial biome thrive and perform at peak performance. All right. This is what it looks like when we do beans on our farm now. We are coming in at boot stage and we are no-tilling soybeans into this cereal rye. Now look, the cereal rye just wiggles around and goes right through the planter. As long as you don't detach it like disc it or something, it just wiggles right through. You don't need any special planter. You saw our row units. The planter just goes right through. Now this right here, this concept was the premise that got me started toward organic. If we can raise soybeans with zero chemistry, we need to be organic. And that's what we were doing. Now, this is what I'm talking about as to be eliminating burned down chemistry. All right, I've got 3 or 4 slides here in a row. And folks, this is all the same field. So it's this field on April 27th. It's now this same field on June the 2nd being roll crimped with my baby, this 60-foot I&J roller crimper. Now, you're out there at the right time because you want to be at anthesis, which is pollen dropping. If you look over here on the right side of the video, you see the pollen dust flying off the roller. See it there? Now you're out there at the right time. This rye is over. It's done. So we planted the beans on I don't remember the date. I think it was April, let's say 25th. I don't remember, 26th. And now we're back about 35 days later, rolling the rye and the soybeans. So now I got off the roller and I let you folks now see what the beans look like the day we rolled it. And now here comes the roller crimper. So now I'm standing on the ground looking down. There's the beans again. They look beautiful down there. These were drilled beans, by the way. And here comes the roller, almost ran over my toe, goes right on by, and we're now going to go, I'm going to step in, and I'm going to show you that the beans are not harmed in any way at all. So let's just let this happen. Here we go. Here comes the camera down. There's the soybeans. Looking, see, they're just fine. looking just fine. Now, you may think that that rye did not roll down very good. At that particular day, it did not, but it went ahead and fell on down to the ground. We had our mat, we were suppressing weeds, and away we went. Again, same field, July 19th. So, are there some weeds coming? Yes. You see the foxtail in the foreground there? And folks, I try to give you transparency. I didn't just go out and find the best spot in the field. I took a picture of wherever I pulled my truck over. You see some mare's tail coming there? So here's what I challenge you with. Grow your beans. I wish every bean in the United States was grown this way. Every bean should be grown with cereal rye. We could eliminate burn down chemistry and then scout and spot spray only. This is good enough for me for organic. Is there going to be some weeds at harvest? Probably. It's okay. But if you were still a conventional farmer that was using chemistry, spot spray or spray nothing until now, cut $50 out of your spray cost. Start building soil health because you're stopping the burning of the chemistry on the microbes in the soil, and start being a good steward to the land. Now, this goes back to what I was talking about earlier about being flexible. So this was a particular year when Mother Nature said, you know what? I know you had plans to plant all your beans the week of April 25th, but you know what? I'm going to rain for 6 weeks and you're not going to be back in the field till June the 2nd. See what you can do with that. And that's what she did. Okay, the rye's already in anthesis. So now what I decided to do was roll first and come behind the roller with the planter. That rye is about 5 feet tall, maybe 5.5 feet tall. And folks, it's gone. That roller has laid it flat and that rye is gone. Now that roller, by the way, those barrels, each barrel's filled full of water. So we got a little more weight. Here comes the planter, 20-inch row spacing planter. There are row cleaners on that planter, but they're not down. They're not doing anything because I don't want to move anything because then we'll get daylight down there and here come the weeds. If you look, you can hardly tell where the planter row unit has ran. Again, same field, July 16th. Absolutely amazing, no inputs. Here we are planting beans, no inputs. Look at that beautiful dead rye mat there, that brown. Isn't that great offset, the green and the brown together? Is there some weeds? Yes. Are they good enough for me in my organic program? Yes. Up to now, it's July 16th, and there's been zero chemistry used on this field. Now you scout, spot spray if you think you can't look at those weeds. It's fine. Again, same field. Here we go. October 17th. Pretty darn clean. Yes, there's a few weeds out there, but not very many. And here we are harvesting organic soybeans. I very rarely talk about yield, but I am going to tell you right now that field yielded in the 70s. Organic, no inputs, yielding in the 70s. This field was cleaner than any field around it, and every field around it sprayed at the minimum 3 times. The one neighbor sprayed 4. And he had more weeds than we did. This can be done. We can do this. Like I said, this is how every soybean in the country ought to be planted and grown. 6 principles of soil health. Minimize disturbance. Now, what they were referring to here is minimize disturbance of chemistry and minimize disturbance of soil. Now, not only am I giving you the 6 principles, I'm kind of ranking them in my order. Number 1, I'm going to, yes, chemistry needs to go, but I'm telling you, tillage has to stop. Tillage is doing too many harmful things. I've already described the detriments that it does to the microbial biome, but it also is germinating all of those weeds in the weed seed bank. in your soil profile that have been laying there for 50 years. You're just bringing them to the surface and letting them get to the sunlight, water, germinate, boom, we got weeds. Stop disturbance. Maximize diversity. I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. Living roots. Having a living root as many days of the year as you possibly can. Armor the soil. Already talked about that. You've got to have that armor out there to protect it. When we planted soybeans last year in 2021, we were planting, I think it was May the 2nd, and I couldn't believe how hot it was. It was 94 degrees out on May the 2nd in Indiana, unheard of. In the canopy, I opened up the canopy, stuck my thermometer in at 2 inches down, and it was 70 degrees. I pulled out my thermometer, went over here just 10 feet away to where there was a bobble where the drill skipped or whatever reason, there was a bare spot, 110 degrees. There was no armor on the soil, 110 degrees. 40 degrees difference. That's a big deal. Context. This one was recently added, and this is important. Everything I've talked about today is going to work anywhere in the world. Maybe not Antarctica, but almost anywhere in the world. But you have to know the context. Will you plant, if you live in Georgia, for example, will you plant the same species that I do? Probably not. But once you understand that and you get to know what species you can and can't plant, you will still follow, though, items 1, 2, 3, and 4 here. It's just a different timing, a different species, different ways to terminate, all of these things. So context is very important. The 6th principle is livestock, not for everybody. I already talked about it. It's not for everybody. But if you have the ability to get livestock, get them and start to build soil health like you've never seen before. And if I may be allowed to add one more, I'd like to add number 7, and I'd like to call it commitment. If you are going to do this type of systematic approach to farming, you have to be committed. Stay there, stay committed, and see it to the end. All right, diversity. There's 3 ways that I like to look at diversity. Number 1, multiple species cocktails. I cannot stress enough that if you are a beginner or someone interested in trying this, you've never, excuse me, you've never done a cover crop before, and you are interested in trying this, do not get crazy and do multiple species cocktails. 1, 2, maybe 3 max. When I started doing cover crop, 1 species was the first thing I did. It was tillage radish on 1 field, and I saw what the results were for the next season before we added another acre. 1 species, 1 field. That's what I want you to do. But when you get to be familiar and you get comfortable with this, then I want you to add multiple species and add diversity. Number 2, annuals and perennials. Too many times when we sit down to build a cocktail, it consists of all annuals. Well, we need the diversity of a perennial in the system also. But you've got to know what your end game is. What is your method of termination? If you are terminating with chemistry, then by all means, plant everything you can get your hands on, because the chemistry will take care of it. But if you are not terminating with chemistry like myself, and you are using mechanical means, perennials are a no-no. I've got chicory in 2 fields that I cannot stop now because, dumb me, I thought I'd bring a perennial in the last year, or the first year that I had no chemistry. So I stopped all chemistry, then decided to plant some chicory. Not smart. So if you're going to do this, please know what your termination method is. But we need this diversity because there are so many microbes below our feet that we don't even know what their names are or what they do. So we cannot shortchange them. We need to feed them everything and anything until we figure out more about them. Commingling cash crops. This is what that picture is about. That is a cold tolerant pea planted into a wheat field. We are going to discover there are so many synergies between cash crops that this is the future. I don't care if you want to farm the way I do or not. I think commingling cash crops is going to be huge. Now, let me set this up. This field was planted into wheat, I don't know, the middle of October. We planted wheat. We came back and we planted the peas right before the ground froze. And this would have been probably the end of November, the 1st of December. We planted these peas 3 inches deep with a corn planter so they'd be safe. I wanted to keep the growing point as deep as we could get them. So these peas are going to come up, they're going to grow. You could do one of many things here. Let's go off on a tangent where let's assume you've got some livestock in your backyard. Maybe they're yours, maybe they're neighbors, maybe it's a dairy. Okay, talk to these folks. Hey, how about you come and take off a powerful forage/cereal cocktail for your cattle to eat? So they're going to pay you now based on the nutrient analysis of that crop. So we're going to come in and take this as haylage. So we're going to mow it and bale it and put it in a bunker or whatever it is you're going to do with it. And the dairy's going to pay you for that and feed it to their animals. And by the way, having that pea in there is probably going to raise the protein by 3, 4, or 5%. Dairies are always looking on ways to raise protein. There you go. Number 2, harvest these two together at maturity and still go to that same dairy. That dairy will have a hammer mill. That hammer mill will size that pea into a piece that the animal can consume and digest. There's number 2. And again, raise the protein value. Number 3 is to harvest these two together and then separate them and sell the soybeans into a soybean market and sell the peas into a pea market. Those are 3 ways to think about commingling. We this year on the farm are going to commingle the what I just described. We're also going to have peas and corn. I have sourced a short statured corn. Again, small acres here, folks, 10, 20 acres. We're going to plant peas and corn together, peas and beans together. We're going to harvest the two together and separate them. And then we'll have tests next to it, a test strip of corn, a test strip of beans, and we'll see if the synergies were there of the commingling. Did after separation, did we have more of the two than we did with the singles? So we'll do all this stuff. But this is where I think we're headed with the future of these cash crops. And this gives us the diversity that I think we truly need. Here's again some more diversity. Those peas growing within that wheat. Again, folks, there's nothing added to this field. No manure, no synthetic fertilizer, nothing. We are living on the regenerative system. Here's what it looks like when we plant these cold tolerant peas. Now this year, I described to you in that previous slide, we used a corn planter. This year, that was 2 years ago. This year, we had enough moisture in the ground. We could get our drill 2 3/4 inches deep. Excuse me. That's deep enough to get these peas to survive the winter. But look at the mat that we are now planting into. That's what it looks like when you have not used chemistry or tillage for multiple years. I love it. The soil is armored. We are ready to go. There's a picture. This was 2 years ago. What do I have here? These peas were planted on November the 1st. We actually could have waited a little longer. I kind of jumped the gun here. I was so excited to do this. We did it. Came back and pulled these on December the 10th. Now, these are out of the ground, okay? We planted 3 inches deep, and you see those those foliates above ground? That was above ground, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we were going to kill these peas. Well, the peas survived. It burned off, the freeze burned them off the ground. They laid there the rest of the winter. They came out next spring, and they look like that. There's the row of wheat in the background. There's the pea coming that we planted into it. Now, the other thing I like about these peas, and I want you folks to think about this, I don't care where you live, but a northern state particularly, we have now widened out your window to plant a legume by 30 to 40 days. Because you can now plant this cold tolerant pea up until the ground freezes. You cannot do that with a clover or a hairy vetch. It will not survive the winter. So if you now are going to consider this pea as fuel for your corn for next spring, which is what we do, this is a game changer. So we have tests on this going on also. We've got fields that were planted last fall to peas only. And they will then, I will look at them this spring. We will make a determination if we're going to continue them as a pea crop only, take those peas to maturity and send them to the processor, or will we terminate those peas, take advantage of their power and raise corn? For every bushel of yield of peas, there's 2 pounds of N been fixed. That's huge. 40 bushel peas is 80 pounds of N that we can now, and that's available now. That is an organic, not inorganic, that is in an organic state, ready to be used by the plant now. 80 bucks times $1 unit of N, $80 an acre. And we've cut 80 pounds of synthetic N out of our plant prescription, or whatever you want to call it. So 28%, I don't know, it's not quite 30 gallons, it's like 27 gallons. That's big. There are those peas again, right there. All right, epigenetics. I want you to read this. I'm going to stop. I'm going to take a drink of water. I'm going to stop. I want everybody to read this. Heritable phenotype changes that do not involve alterations in the DNA sequence. Imagine that. This is there's 2 things I'm going to dedicate the rest of my farming career on. I mean, I'm going to do a lot of other things, but these 2 here, I'm going to really hone in on. Epigenetics and stimulants that turn on certain microbes. I don't want to add microbes to our system. We've got the biology working. I still can't turn on, though, certain sectors of the biome, and I need stimulants to help do that. These are the 2 things, but I'm going to focus here on epigenetics. Here's what I mean by this. We have gone back in time and we have sourced 10 varieties of soybeans that are off patent. So there's no laws being broken here. You cannot do this with enlist soybeans. They're still under patent. You're breaking the law. So don't misunderstand what I'm saying here. We are only doing this to genetics that are off patent. And we are growing these genetics out. So there is a building in Colorado that houses every seed known to man. And they will send you 100 seeds. That's what we did. We went back and bought 10 varieties that are off patent. We grew them out. We've now trimmed 10 down to 5. And now we have about a unit of each one. And we are going to now plant a unit of each of these 5 varieties in our system. We'll take our notes. We'll see which one of maybe 2 of these varieties we like. And we are then going to continue to run those those offspring year after year after year and not introduce any other genetics to the farm. We are going to let that seed adapt to our system. Read sentence number 2. These phenotypic trait changes may result from external or environmental factors or be part of normal development. I'm telling you what's happening today, and I'm not saying this is being done on purpose, but this is what I'm saying is happening. The latest and greatest genetics, being a hybrid of corn or a variety of soybeans, are losing the association with the mycorrhizal fungi. And when you lose that association with the fungi, you are now solely dependent on synthetic inputs. This is a dangerous place to be. And I want to move away from all of that, and we are going to start growing our own soybeans. We are now starting our own corn. We're going to do this with cover crops. We're starting to raise our own cereal rye, and we're never going to buy another bag. We're going to continue with the same genetics. We're doing this with our livestock. We're going to try to get to the herd to a spot and not introduce any outside genetics. Heritable phenotype changes that do not involve changes in the DNA sequence. I love this. This isn't new, but this is something I thought about, and this is where I want to take the farm. Take advantage of the free stuff. There's your formula for photosynthesis. The sun is the most powerful energy source known to man. We have to take advantage of it. We need to maximize photosynthesis so we can maximize the amount of sugar that's being pumped into the ground and the amount of oxygen being pumped into the ground. That's why we need aggregate stability to hold all of these pockets of air so everything can breathe. When those microbes consume items in the soil, they're breathing like you and I. They're letting off CO2 that then releases and comes up and is then available for that corn plant or that cash crop, whatever it may be. Now, remember, I told you I had the slide about cereal rye, and I was going to come back and talk about what this means in today's terms. So here now, folks, my screen isn't big enough. I'm only doing the 3 biggies, N, P, and K. That 12-inch rye had sequestered 82 pounds of N, and at today's values, that's worth $65.60, $29 for P, and I've got something hiding that, $86 for K, for a total of $181. That's just at the 12-inch rye. At the 18-inch rye, we move up to $278 worth of value based on today's current market. And again, this slide is outdated. I should probably put the date on here. This slide was made 6 weeks ago, so these numbers are probably too low. The 28-inch rye, we're up to $352. So just take half of that. What is that, 160 or something, 170? Whatever the math is, $170 worth of savings per acre on just the 3 biggies, N, P, and K, by reducing your inputs by half. All right, then I went ahead and did the dead rye 2 months later, still got $170 worth of value out there. And this is what I used for, at the time I built this slide, current market values. So again, these numbers may be skewed just a hair, but look at the first one on the line, $29 of investment to get back $350. I'll do that every single day. All right, nitrogen is all around us. I already said earlier, 78.1% of nitrogen that we breathe. We have to take advantage of this. It's free. Same thing. Remember the slide on legumes on May 28th? We've got $62 of N, 59P, and 115K for 236. On June the 4th, we're up to $380 worth of value. Wait till you see the next one. June the 8th, Look at these numbers. Outrageous. It's almost unbelievable. But this is what the lab came back with. These are the calculations I made. It is unbelievable. But this goes to show you that we can do this if we just start to minimize the amount of synthetic fertilizer that we're using. Stop spraying the harmful insecticides. Stop spraying the fungicides. Tar spot was very bad in our area last year. I'm in one of our fields at least every single day, if not more than one. I could not find tar spot in a single field of ours. That to me is a validation that what we're doing is correct. And I could see tar spot in neighbors' fields just from driving down the road. So again, we've got to try to get ourselves off of some of this stuff. There you go. There's the 6 week. Now look at the power of this one. There's the 6 week later of exhaustion, and we went from $785 down to $93. So basically, we chucked $600 worth of savings back into the profile to be recycled, regenerated, whatever you want to call it. So, and again, here's the numbers I used. Cocktail was $33. Wow, spend 33 to make 800. I'll do it every day. All right, we got to head toward the home stretch here. Corn. We're going to talk about corn now. This is September the 18th. The only way you're going to get here, unless you live in Georgia, is to have a regen year, have a cereal grain year, something. This particular field was a cereal grain year. We have regen years. It doesn't matter. You harvest that cereal grain. You do not double crop. You get out there on August the 15th and plant. And that's what we did. Now, this is what patience looks like when we let these cocktails go. Now, again, there's the volunteer rye I was talking about. We did not plant that rye to be into this field this spring. So I'm guessing 30, maybe 40 pounds. But what I did do here, this is an experiment of planting corn basically 3 or 4 weeks too early. Because if you'll notice, there's no blooms on any of that clover. I had to do this because I don't know who to call. I don't know who I can talk to because I don't know of anybody that farms like we do. At least I don't know who they are. I'm sure there's some, but I don't know who they are. So we do all of this testing all the time. Now, it's the same field. I just got out of the tractor and I wanted you to see what it looks like from the ground. Look at, there's the clover, there's the rye roll down, but look, I just took my finger and dug down until I found the seed. Look at the beautiful little world that seed is living in. So it looks like a jungle up here, but down there where that seed is, it's absolutely beautiful. Now, unfortunately, I do not have the video footage of the roller crimper. I don't know where it is, but we came in 2 or 3 days after this and we rolled this down with a roller crimper because I wanted to see if we could take care of the clover at that young of a stage. No, couldn't do it. So here's what we were left with. As you can see, the cereal rye is gone. Now, there's corn planted in here. I just showed you the seed. There is corn planted. I'm going to show you some of the plants. There they are right there. See them? There's the corn right there, about V3. So now look at the volunteer vetch. I told you we had volunteer vetch. Look at all the white bloom clover now that the roller crimper did nothing to. Well, the corn's too tall to roll now. So now we're going to flail chop. Here comes the corn in row. There it is. Nothing wrong with it. We do have some stand issues there, and that was because the biomass was just outrageous, 14,000 pounds. But as you can see, there's not a weed to be found. Okay, so now you pull in with the flail chopper. You set the flail chopper right above the corn. As you see that last plant that I stopped the video on, we actually took the top of him off. That's not going to hurt anything. And we flail chop this, And now we've given this corn an avenue to get out and get to the sunlight. Okay, no-till planting corn into alfalfa. This is my favorite right here. So this alfalfa is established probably 2 years ago. It has been cut and hauled away for 2 years. Oh, look at that. Isn't that beautiful? To look down from these drone shots, see no tillage, and we're planting corn. Now I've got another one. I'll just go ahead and let it run while I continue to talk because I never know. I like both videos, so I just play them both. But as you can see, the wheels on the tracks on the tractor, the wheels on the planter, the gauge wheels, all this is already laying the alfalfa down. You can see it really good as this drone swings around. But bear in mind here, folks, this couldn't get more risky. I'm asking you to plant a warm season grass, corn, in a well-established perennial alfalfa. That's almost suicide. So if you're going to do this, please do it on small acres, 5, 10, 15, 20. See how you get along. Okay, this same field again. This alfalfa is about 30 inches tall. It's probably 50% bloom. It's ready to go down. Here's the same field. Now we're roll crimping at V1, V2 area. Now we know, now look at that, the past just prior to this. Look how it's already wilting in the heat of the day. We know this is not going to terminate the alfalfa. We know that. What we're trying to do is lay the alfalfa down so the corn can get out and go up and go to the sunlight and take off. So once you can pull this off, you just about got it made. Now we still need some help from Mother Nature. We have a live, viable, growing perennial that's going to take moisture out of the profile. That's why we're not mowing this. Everybody says, Rick, why didn't you mow it? Just mow it to the ground and plant right behind it and get your corn out ahead of the regrow. Well, what happens to alfalfa when you mow it? It wants to regrow. And when it regrows, it needs nutrients and it needs moisture. My corn crop needs that. That's why I want to do it this way. Now, we need help from Mother Nature here. We need a rain event. We got to get something soon. This is what you can come up with. Now, this field not only looks like this, it's the same field. Remember I told you I set these all up. But this field had 2 waves of black cutworm and still got to this point. So when you can do this, now let's go back and think about my 70-30 rule. 70% of weed suppression is done with the cover crop / alfalfa. Okay, so now we've got the alfalfa established. It's our suppression. You notice there wasn't a weed out there. Now let's go to the 30% part of the rule. Cash crop canopy, 20-inch row corn, 20-inch row beans. We're canopying here. We're going to smother and crush this alfalfa. That's how we terminate it. Because that's always the next question. How are you terminating the alfalfa? If you can get the corn to come up and grow and do this and canopy, you will crush the alfalfa, smother it, take all the daylight away, and it'll look like the alfalfa's been attacked by leafhopper or weevils. It's dropping every leaf. It's yellow and it is melting to the ground. And I apologize, I cannot find the harvest video because the harvest video here would show that there was not any alfalfa living in any of that cornfield. Absolutely amazing. We've done this 4 years now. But please be careful. Do not just start in and do this. You've got to see if you have the right environment to do this. You need hybrids that have great vigor and can get up and go. There's my illustration of farming green. I mean, I can't imagine anything else better than this. That's truly regenerative in my definition. It's exactly what I want to do. Exactly. You can't do that. Oh, yes, I can. I sacrifice yield to maintain soil health. I do it every single day. Grow the nitrogen we need with legumes of cocktails that include each of the 4 categories. I've got to wrap this up, but I want you to write this down. Green Cover Seed has webinars. And within those webinars, there's a 4-part series from Dr. Christine Jones. Green Cover Seed webinar, Dr. Christine Jones. She has 4 of them on there. One of them is all about nitrogen, and she will tell you in an hour and whatever, hour and a half, that you can grow corn with 0 synthetic inputs and 0 legumes. Check it out. Plant green in the living cover crops. Do it all the time. Plant beans in the 72-inch rye. Plant corn in the cereal rye. We already talked about that. Bring the nitrogen forward. It's okay to have 23 plants. In 21, I think I had 38. I don't remember the exact number, but it was a bunch. Park your planter no matter the date. If the fields aren't fit to be in, don't be in them. And always resort back to number 1. Do I sacrifice yield to maintain soil health? Yes. If the fields are damp and I'm going to create a compaction zone, I'm not going to be in there. It's that simple. Do not plant corn in April again. I hope I never do. Plant multiple cash crops in the same field. I think that's where we're headed. Totally eliminate all inputs. I took no CFAP government subsidy payments. I eliminated crop insurance, which is subsidized by the government 4 years ago, and I'm no longer in any government programs. Folks, I am not going to stand here and ask you to take everything away and then hold my hand out and say, okay, where's my subsidy at? Help me out here. I'm not doing that, for one. And for two, I believe in this system so much, I feel like I don't need any of that. Regen acres, no cash crop, and certified organic with no tillage in the 3-pass system. To truly be regenerative, you have to take everything away, and I mean everything. Now, I know that is a bold statement. So fine, Rick, you're on Mars, you're way over there somewhere, I'm over here, but folks, we can meet somewhere on this curve, and let's start to be regenerative minded, good stewards, conservation, and let's start how to think about reducing the synthetic load on our precious fields. If you are not uncomfortable with what you are doing, then you are not trying hard enough to change. Think about that for just a couple moments. I challenge everyone here today to get a little uncomfortable. I think you like how it feels. I'm proud to be a farmer, but I am way more proud of the way I farm. I call it regenerative organic stewardship with no tillage. Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here with the Illinois Stewardship Alliance folks. Liz, thank you for inviting me. This has been a blast. There's a way to get a hold of me. And Liz, I'll stop sharing screen here in just a couple moments.
All right. Thank you, Rick. Round of applause to you. Thank you so much for all of this information. We've been getting a lot of praise for your presentation in the chat, and
Thank you.
we're grateful for your time. And I'm wondering if we could use a little more time and maybe get to a couple questions that have been shared in the chat, or I think we could maybe take off some mute options here too, and have folks ask their questions directly. Okay. So there were a lot of questions out there about like farmer training, funding and support. And we shared a few. I know that there are some really knowledgeable folks on this call, some soil water conservation districts, NRCS staffers, many others, some resources, but are there any specific programs that you would maybe want to highlight?
No, but this is an excellent topic. We need to spend a few minutes on this. There are a lot of folks like I that come out, speak, tell, a lot of our successes, some of our outcomes we did not expect, and we get everybody all charged up, and then we get either, click the end button on the Zoom, or we get in our car and we drive home. I understand this is a huge void, and that support group comes from folks like you, Liz, and your group comes from NRCS folks, comes from SWCD, and all of these people want to see this succeed, and they want to be able to help us. So are there any programs in place today? Not that I know of for the support. Now, Equip is there to help you with getting started, but with the new round of funding that the Biden administration has laid out, there will be grants given to this exact topic, and there are going to be groups probably created that will be for hire and can go out and let's say, Liz, let's say your group wants to have a 3-day soil health event. You will probably be able to hire these teachers to come in and maybe A, teach teachers, or B, teach the farmers also. So I think it's coming, but it is an excellent point because, it's March and May 20th comes around. And I said, wait a minute, what Rick say? Did he say to do this or do we do that? I don't remember. Oh my gosh, my rye's 6 feet tall. What am I going to do? That becomes a problem.
Yes.
Great question.
Thanks. And there were some resources shared in the chat. There are a lot of local organizations, and we can try to point you to some organizations too. Just shoot me an email and I'm happy to help. And there were also some questions on, this is a big topic. And are you hearing anything on your end from big ag purveyors selling chemical inputs, et cetera, that there's maybe going to be like a shift in how we're talking about soil health? Have you seen any systems change from them?
Not really, other than escalating prices. It isn't amazing how the world goes on COVID lockdown for 18 months and everything comes to a grinding halt. I mean, it's just amazing how we're out of everything. But no, I would imagine that big companies are starting to hear some footsteps coming up behind them that they haven't ever heard before. I think there's room for everybody. So we can't, and this is very important again. What we're talking about, and Liz, what your whole conference this week is talking about is a different way to do things. Okay, that doesn't mean you're going to get everybody to do this. So we have to accept that you're not going to get 100% of the acres to be farmed in this. It's not going to happen. So accept that. Okay, what is acceptable? 25, 30%. Now let's work within that arena. How do we maximize the efficiency of getting 30% of the acres around the world in a regenerative system? Because here's what I truly believe. It then becomes, I just lost the word I wanted. It becomes its own enigma, because if it's like we started easy, went small, and then once I saw the rewards, I couldn't get enough of it quick enough. So I think if we stop trying to jam it down everybody's throat and let's step back and let them see for themselves that this works through attrition, it's just going to start to grow on its own. That's what I think.
Thank you. That's a great answer. So we have a few more, and then I'll get to one new one in the chat from Nathan. Let's see. Have you had any challenges accessing crop insurance as a result of your practices? And has crop insurance been a barrier to practice adoption for you at any point?
Great question. Yes. Crop insurance was a huge barrier 5 years ago to the way we do things. Today, not so much. I actually got a call from, I haven't had any insurance in 4 years, but I actually got a call from an agent yesterday, or no, not yesterday, Friday, and said, hey, Rick, I know you don't take insurance, but things have relaxed a little bit. And if you can get an expert, which by the way, you are an expert, so you could write this letter for yourself stating that this is an acceptable practice, they will allow you to terminate cover crops up to 3-4 weeks after your cash crop has emerged. This is a big deal. And they've also are now letting folks insure relay cropping, another big deal. So you see, we got to be patient here, folks. Give this time. RMA, who we thought 5 years ago would never flex or bend on this, is now all of a sudden starting to relax and accept that what we're doing is working. Big chemistry is going to do the same thing. Now, what big chemistry should be doing is starting to get into this arena and help us become better stewards of the land by minimizing inputs. That's what they should be doing. And maybe some of them already are. But again, we've got to reach a point where we have to stop trying to jam this down everybody's throat and step back and just let nature take its course. But great question. I hope I answered it. No 5 years ago. Yes, today they're relaxing their rules and letting us start to play ball with them.
Yeah, and I do want to highlight too, in Illinois and now in Indiana, there is I'm not sure how Indiana differs, but we have the $5 crop insurance reward program.
Yep.
So if you have crop insurance and show proof of planting cover crops the fall prior, you can get $5 per acre reduction on your premium. So there are some really great opportunities that are just keep coming. And I know it stemmed from Iowa with Practical Farmers of Iowa, and our American Farmland Trust here really took the reins there and created a really good model too. So some things to keep an eye out of. Very competitive, but we're getting there slowly but surely. All right. So Nathan Helms asked, how effective have your farming practices been on influencing your local farming community to openly adopt or consider some or all of those methodologies you shared with us today?
Yeah, Nathan, that's kind of a spot with me because I've not done a very good job, I guess. I guess the old rule is you got to get 50 miles from home and then you become famous or popular or whatever the term is. I do have here lately, I've had more conversations than I've had in the last 15 years. But to answer your question, I've not done a very good job of getting the local community to follow what I'm doing. I don't know if that's my fault. I don't know. I have field days. I can get 7 countries represented at the field day. I can get 30 states represented, and I can't get one farmer from my own county. So that wears on me a little bit. I feel like I haven't been a very good ambassador to this type of farming, and that does bother me. I am going to strive to make it better, though. We have our field day on the farm on the even years of the year. So this year's an even year, so we'll have a field day. I will try to get at least 5 local farmers there. I will personally go talk to them and drag them there if I have to. But yes, it's very strange how there are pockets in the United States where it almost becomes a friendly contest. Who can outdo the other? Who can make this cross the acres quicker than anybody else? And all of a sudden you got the whole county doing it. Then you've got counties like mine that want to do nothing with what I'm doing. So I don't quite understand that demographic. Maybe someday we will. Maybe it's an age thing. We don't have very many young farmers in this county. They're mostly older farmers. So maybe that's part of it. I don't know. But great question. But I'm going to work on it.
Yeah. More coffee chats and just hanging out with people.
Yeah.
And I know, I think a lot of us are struggling with that. That's definitely been a constant question of, how do we change mindsets? And
Right.
But
No. Hey, Liz, I'd like to say something.
Sure.
I spoke at Edwards County, Illinois last week. Great counties down southern Illinois. And I want to lay something out that I think helps fill the void here, okay? Not only the teaching aspect is important, that those folks at Edwards and Wayne County have gone together and they've bought a rig to lease or rent to the farmer to plant cover crop. And they are working together with Cliff Schutte. Cliff's been a long time player in this cover crop world, I think maybe 35, 40 years. and Cliff can sit down and build these packages for you. Make sure you stay in your comfort zone. And they're starting to do what I call closing this loop, where you've got the EQIP program from the government, you've got a program even from Edwards and Wayne County, like this $5 to then subtract off. You've then got the use of the equipment at a very low rate. And this is a way for the farmer to get in and also get professional advice to get started. And I cannot stress enough how important it is to have success that first time you try this, because if you don't, you're going to say, well, I told you, I tried to tell you it wouldn't work here, and I just proved it, because they failed. They're never coming back. So when you do things like this, now you set up that support group, and maybe they've already got it. You now have a complete system that will definitely guide that farmer to success. And Liz, this is huge.
Yeah, not only community, but I mean, I love your approach here. It's not taking a bigger bite than you can chew. It's kind of starting off small and seeing what works for your farm, and talking with those that are in your community to know what you might need to plant at what time, and not copying off of what Rick Clark is doing in Indiana, but taking your examples and the model that you're presenting.
Right. And like I said in my presentation, you have tremendous speakers this week. Take pieces of each one and take them home. There are no silver bullets, and there's not any this fits all categories. That does not exist. So take pieces and take them home and try it for yourself.
Thank you. And, I have one more question in the chat, and let's see, we could maybe take a few more if we have time. I know we're approaching 2:00, but how would a landowner, if you have this advice for someone, this is a landowner looking for how they would basically ask their tenants to adopt these methods. Are there any suggestions that you might have? He has a lot of resistance from his current tenants.
Yeah, I feel for you. We have a consulting company, and this is probably one of the top 3 questions asked. How do I get the current tenant to change ways and do what we want to do? Well, my usual answer is, after multiple times of speaking, maybe you hire me to come in and sit down with them. We feel them out. You're simply going to have to just break the tie. And you're going to have to look for someone either in the community that's currently doing what you want, or look for that individual that's willing to make that change with you. Maybe you never know. You never know what's going on until you start asking questions. Maybe there's a 28-year-old farmer that is dying to get into regenerative, but doesn't quite have everything he needs. But if he knew you existed and could take your acres and add them to his acres, now it's something that he can do. So sometimes you just have to start spreading the word. Hey, this is my farm. My ancestry started this. I have ancestors that want to keep it going. I'm sorry, but if you are not on board with us, we're going to have to look for somebody else. I know that's a tough pill to swallow, but sometimes that's what we have to do if those are the things that we want to do. Now, I want to go one step further with this, Liz, because there are also people that ask me, well, Rick, I'm the farmer, and that tenant will only give me that landowner will only give me a 1-year contract. I get that too. Why in the world would I invest all of this time and energy on a 1-year contract that could be taken away from me next year? So what I'm going to suggest to the landowners out there is, please, if you are in these situations, please find that farmer that you want to take this journey with, and then give him some security and give him a 5-year, a 7-year, a 10-year contract, and let him then relax about losing this farm and focus his time in on being a good steward and building regenerative conservation soil health practices. So I hope I answered your question, but basically in a nutshell, sometimes you got to just bite the bullet and say, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to part ways.
Thank you. Very, very helpful. And Jean Brokish from American Farmland Trust shared a link for some helpful talking points to kind of expound on what you're saying too, Rick.
But, you know, there's just so we could go on for hours.
Mhm.
You have to stay in communication with the landowner. You have to. We meet with them 4 times a year. We keep track of everything we do to their farm. If we go out and fix a tile hole, we document it, we show them, we take pictures. If we do a waterway, and we don't charge them anything for this stuff. But what we're trying to show is that we care as much about their acre as we do our acre. And there is no preferential treatment here. Everybody is treated the same way. And once you have these communications and you have this education, because you got to remember too, there are a lot of landowners that don't have a clue what we're even talking about here today. So when you sit down with them and want to talk to Martha, who's 85 years old in Palm Springs, she has no clue what you're talking about. But once you get her educated and explain to her that you want to do this, believe me, you'll be surprised at how eager she'll be for you to get on board and start doing these things. So we just got to keep the lines of communication open and let everyone be aware of what's going on.
Thank you. Are there any other last minute questions out there in the Zoom world? I'll give you some time to type if you do have a question, but to kind of, because we are at 2 o'clock, I'm just going to share my screen really quick to kind of close us out here. So I just wanted to again thank you so much, Rick Clark, for giving us your time, for extra time. This has just been a really wonderful presentation, and I saw you a couple years ago and I actually got to see you in person, and just the amount of progress that you made is just, it continues to blow my mind, and I'm just really happy you were able to be with us today.
Well, thank you. It's been an absolute honor. And please tune in to the rest of the week. There's all kinds of excitement in store. So thank you so much. And everyone, please have a safe and prosperous spring. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Yes, and a big shout out to all these folks that have helped share this wonderful event. A great list of sponsors on our website. We are giving away $25 gift cards and Alliance t-shirts to those that fill out evaluations, thanks to a donation from Geosmin. It's actually a agriculture consulting service that's also in Indiana. So thank you very much to Ashley. And tomorrow, please tune in for kind of a continuation of what we learned today, more talk about building soil health and economic wealth on your farm. Jim Mosley, he is a former Deputy Secretary of USDA. He's an Indiana farmer, will be leading a terrific panel with Jean Brokish from American Farmland Trust, Lee Kirby, Joe Curlis, and Frank Rodemaker, who are 3 local farmers. So you'll get a lot of input on what's going on the Illinois side of things too. All right, well, I think that does it. Thank you again, everybody. And yes, Rick, I hope to keep in touch. Glad you are staying safe and healthy. And yeah, shoot us some information about that field day. I know we live pretty close, so we'll try to make it.
Oh, you bet. We'll do her. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.